Hey, History Leaks here. The new movie Warfare tells the story of a platoon of Navy SEALs who embark on a dangerous mission in Ramadi, Iraq. But the reality was even darker. In 2006, Ramadi was considered the most dangerous city in Iraq, where around 80 American soldiers were killed trying to take it. And this is how it all unfolded. When the US invaded Iraq in 2003, they took down Saddam Hussein's regime in less than a month. Saddam Hussein was a brutal dictator. He ruled Iraq for 24 years through fear. There's no question about that. He used torture, crushed political dissent, and it was through his brutality that he kept Iraq under control. So when his regime finally collapsed in 2003, all of that control disappeared overnight. The coalition forces quickly set up a new Iraqi government, but they made two critical errors that unintentionally caused chaos and fueled a massive insurgency. Firstly, they disbanded the entire Iraqi army, and second, they banned all former Ba'ath Party members, Saddam's political party, from participating in the new government. So suddenly you had over 300,000 former soldiers and officers who found themselves jobless, angry, and feeling deeply humiliated. Many of these former military officers lived in Ramadi, which was a city located 70 miles west of Baghdad, nestled between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. And Ramadi had a population of 500,000 people and had long been a stronghold of Saddam's Ba'ath Party and the Iraqi military elite. Saddam Hussein himself often vacationed there, enjoying lavish palaces that he built along the city's outskirts. So as the tensions rose, foreign fighters began streaming into Iraq. They were taking advantage of the turmoil, and Al-Qaeda in Iraq quickly emerged and rapidly grew more powerful, and Ramadi became one of their prime targets. By 2006, Ramadi had descended into full-blown insurgency chaos. There were no functioning local authorities. Police officers had either been killed or fled. Al-Qaeda fighters openly patrolled and controlled the streets. Anyone who cooperated with or even spoke to US forces risked brutal retaliation, often public executions or beheadings intended to terrorize locals into submission. And the American strategy at the time simply just wasn't effective. Troops operated primarily out of large military bases outside the city, conducting missions by day, then retreating to the safety of their bases at night. This predictable rhythm allowed the insurgents to reclaim control every evening. They would threaten and intimidate the locals into silence. So progress simply just wasn't being made. And by mid-2006, Ramadi was probably the most dangerous city in Iraq. It had become the epicenter of the war, and the US military decided it was time for a dramatic change in their strategy. For locals, life in Ramadi was brutal. Between 2004 and 2006, thousands of civilians were killed in Anbar province due to the rising insurgent violence. And in 2006, the insurgents declared Ramadi as the capital of their planned new caliphate. And this was years before ISIS, but the blueprint was already being written. Al-Qaeda in Iraq wanted to govern. They were handing out leaflets, they were collecting taxes, and running their own courts. And this wasn't just a shadowy network anymore, it was becoming a full-blown insurgent regime. US intelligence estimated there were over 1,000 full-time insurgents operating inside the city. That didn't count part-time fighters or collaborators, just the core armed force. And they were well-armed, well-organized, and dug in deep. Coalition troops faced daily ambushes. Every street was dangerous. Every building could be rigged with explosives. Snipers were everywhere. Roadside bombs were planted faster than they could be cleared. The entire city was a war zone, and the enemy knew the terrain better than anyone. So at this point, many in the US command believed that Ramadi might be a lost cause. Just like the streets of Ramadi were a minefield back in 2006, the internet today can feel just as dangerous. Only now, the threats are all digital. Have you been getting tons of spam in your email recently? What about random calls? It's really annoying, isn't it? Data broker sites are collecting your personal information. Anything from your email, full name, address, social security number, even your political affiliation. Cybercriminals can even use AI to mimic the voices of your friends and family to trick people into sending them money. And it gets even worse. People out there are getting huge loans taken out in their names without even knowing about it. But don't worry, because the sponsor of today's video, Aura, can help stop all of that. Aura scans billions of data points across the dark web, public records, and shady data broker sites. If your info shows up anywhere, you'll get an alert immediately right through their app. And that's just the beginning. Aura also gives you a built-in VPN with military-grade encryption, a password manager to create and securely store strong passwords, real-time financial fraud alerts, up to $5 million in identity theft insurance, and parental controls to keep your family safe, manage screen time, block harmful content, and get alerts for cyberbullying or online predators. If you're curious whether your information is already out there, you can try Aura free for 14 days. Just go to aura.com/historyleaks or click the link in the description below. And seriously, if you've been thinking about upgrading your online security, Aura is a solid choice. It's like a digital Swiss Army knife. It does it all. So use my code to grab that free trial and lock things down today. All right, stay safe online, and now back to the video. Previous strategies had failed. Casualties were growing, and the insurgents controlled most of the city. But Colonel Sean McFarland changed everything. His plan was to stop operating from outside bases and instead move into Ramadi, live there, and fight from within the city. This was known as the ink blot strategy. Establish small fortified outposts inside insurgent territory, then slowly expand block by block. It was risky and they knew they were going to lose some men, but it was the only way the US Army could prove to the locals that they were there to protect them. So as they built these combat outposts on the outskirts of the city, the next move was to push into the heart of Ramadi. The city center was an area completely controlled by insurgents. They set up their combat outposts inside blown out buildings surrounded by enemy fighters. Supplies had to be hauled in under fire. Every street was laced with IEDs. Snipers were waiting on rooftops. The enemy was everywhere, and they knew the Americans were trying to take the city back. At the peak of the conflict, around 63% of casualties in Iraq were caused by IEDs. Fighting was constant, it was close quarters. The battle stretched from June to November 2006. It was almost half a year of daily, street-by-street fighting. And the US troops in Ramadi were sometimes involved in 6 to 8 firefights per day. According to military reports from 2006, they were clearing buildings one by one, using sledgehammers and explosives just to get through walls safely. Every window, every door, every alley was a potential kill zone. And slowly the locals began to notice the Americans weren't leaving at night anymore. They were protecting the streets, helping families, and pushing the insurgents back. It was the start of a shift, and Ramadi was beginning to turn. So military force wasn't enough to win Ramadi. They also needed the locals on their side. So the US commanders made a critical move and reached out to tribal leaders. Most of Anbar province in Iraq was still a tribal society, and the sheikhs held real power. Many of them were supporting the insurgents or staying silent. They didn't trust the American soldiers, and they weren't convinced that the US could protect them if they spoke out. But that started to change because the constant violence from Al-Qaeda, especially the intimidation and executions that were going on, began to turn the locals against them. The people were tired of living in fear, and when they saw American troops holding ground, building these outposts and staying in their neighborhoods, some of the tribal leaders took a chance, and they began working with US forces, providing them intel, helping recruit local police. And this movement became known as the Anbar Awakening, and it was a kind of tribal revolt against Al-Qaeda, backed by American support, and it gave the population a way to fight back. The impact was massive. Al-Qaeda started losing safe havens. They were being pushed out of areas they once controlled, and after the Anbar Awakening, the attacks in the province dropped by over 70%. So by the end of 2006, Ramadi changed dramatically. Block by block, US forces and local tribes pushed Al-Qaeda out of the city. Combat outposts were established throughout key neighborhoods. A local police force was reformed. Civilians, for the first time in years, began to speak openly again. but the cost was high. Some US units in Ramadi experienced casualty rates as high as 25%, meaning 1 in 4 soldiers were killed or wounded, and the Iraqi civilians suffered even more. But the story didn't end there. After US forces withdrew from Iraq in 2011, the country fell back into instability. In 2014, ISIS, born from the remnants of Al-Qaeda in Iraq, launched a major offensive in Ramadi, and they captured it again, turning it back into a war zone. It would take until 2016 for the Iraqi army to take the city back, and today Ramadi is being rebuilt, but the scars remain, both in the city and in the people who fought for it. It was never just about one battle. Ramadi is remembered as a major turning point in a long and complicated war. If you enjoyed that video, please consider subscribing for more, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.